My Pixelmon server just released an update where you can fuse Pokemon together. For example, you can fuse a Charizard with an Aggron to create an Agrizard. I have 3 goals for this 100 days. First is to acquire 6 fusion Pokemon, but 1 has to be shiny. Second is to defeat all 8 gyms. And my last goal is to steal a Pokemon from the war zone. On day 1, I started off with nothing but a shiny Charmander and some Pokeballs. This shiny Charmander was actually very important because if I could get a shiny Aggron, then I could fuse these 2 Pokemon together to get a shiny Agrizard. Charmander, you're the chosen one. The first thing that I did was go to the fusion room so that I could check out all of the different fusions that the server has. And the first one that is featured is an Agrizard, which is one of the Pokemon that I hope to get. Except my Agrizard is going to be shiny. There's also a Rayveltal, a Zacius, a Grouchump, and many more. This Laprera is also one that I'm going to be targeting in this video because it's a fusion between Lapras and Torterra, which are 2 Pokemon that are relatively easy to capture. So then I RTP'd into the wilderness and got searching for Pokemon. Since one of my goals in this adventure is not only to get a bunch of fusion Pokemon, but also to beat all of the gyms, I wanted to make sure that I had a lot of really strong Pokemon. So I went out and tried to catch every strong Pokemon that I could find. And the first one that I came across was this Larvitar, which will eventually evolve into a pseudo-legendary Tyranitar. And so I chucked a bunch of Pokeballs at it until I captured it. And boom! Just like that, we had our second Pokemon, a level 22 Larvitar. Then I noticed that I'd stumbled across somebody else's base, so I went over to check it out. And without any permission, I was able to walk right into the door. I looked in his chest and saw that he had a sea pickle, so I decided to take it and use it for, my own pleasure. I feel like I should say this though, if you do steal from other players on the server, you will be banned. So do not take after me or else you'll get banned. Luckily though, it is my server, so I can do what I want. And I want to steal some sea pickles. Then I found a Master Ball loot and I got a big pearl from it. It might not seem like too big of a deal, but you can actually sell these big pearls for a lot of money. And with that money, I can buy Pokemon that other players are selling on the GTS. So one plan that I had in mind was to get a lot of money on the server so that I can buy rare Pokemon and fuse them together. And getting a big pearl was definitely a good start. Then I found a forest biome, which was very important because that is where Turtwig spawns. And Turtwig eventually will evolve into Torterra, which I can fuse with the Lapras to get a Laprera. And only a couple seconds into searching, I found a Bayleaf, which isn't really what we were looking for, but it is another starter grass Pokemon, which gave me a lot of hope. And not too long later, I did it. I found a Turtwig. So I sent my Charmander at it, hit it with a couple of scratches until it was in the red. Then I threw my Pokeballs at it. And just like that, we had already captured our first half to our first fusion Pokemon. I nicknamed my Turtwig Labrat 1 and my Charmander Shiny Labrat 1 because they're pretty much going to be used as fusion fodder later on in this video. And I stumbled across a village, which had already been pillaged by other members of society, so there wasn't really too much left in here. I did, however, steal the bell and kept moving. And then I randomly stumbled across a Scorbunny, which is not a Pokemon that I was thinking of catching at all in this 100 days. But after thinking about it, he actually does have a Pokemon that he can fuse with. If I can somehow manage to get my hands on an Urshifu, a Cinderace and Urshifu can fuse together to create Cindershifu, and that would be epic. And so already we had 4 Pokemon on the team. Then I adventured until I found an ocean biome because that is where Lapras will spawn. However, Lapras is definitely a very challenging Pokemon, so I was expecting this to take quite a while. So I crafted a boat, became Jack Sparrow, and sailed off to the sea. And as I was out at sea, I decided to make a pit stop at my toilet. When duty calls, duty calls. And well, my editor let me know that while I was taking care of business, of course, that is when a Lapras spawned right in front of me. When I got back from nuking my bathroom, unfortunately, there was no Pokemon here. So I decided to continue boating outwards and onwards until we stumbled across another one. And then it happened. I found another Lapras in the wild. The problem was it was level 30 and I didn't have any Pokemon to damage it. So again, I just had to throw random Pokeballs at it until I hopefully caught it. And a couple Pokeballs later, it happened. I caught the Lapras. I nicknamed him Ratlab 2 2. Then I got to training my Turtwig. The best way that I knew to do that was to warp to the training area. Here, you can battle trainers over and over again to level up your Pokemon. And not too long later, my Turtwig, aka Labrat, evolved into a Grottle. And not too long after that, Labrat evolved again into the Pokemon we've been waiting for, a Torterra. And now that I had Labrat number 1 and 2, it was time to fuse them. Now, normally it is pretty challenging to get a fusion key, which is something that you need in order to actually fuse your 2 Pokemon together. But for the sake of the video, I just decided to give myself the keys that I need. So with that being said, the next thing I did was add my Lapras to the left side, my Torterra to the right side, added my fusion key, and confirm that Leprera is the Pokemon that I wanted. I looked to the left, I saw my Lapras, I looked to the right, and saw my Torterra, and then bang! My 2 Pokemon fused, and a Leprera appeared. I was so excited. This was easily one of the coolest looking Pokemon that I had ever seen. And not only did he look incredibly cool, but he's very, very strong as well. I was so excited to use him. And probably the coolest thing about these fusion Pokemon is at level 100, they get their own custom moves. For example, when Leprera gets to level 100, it learns a move called Tropical Remap. This move does a lot of damage, and it also resets the battlefield from any terrain. So the next thing I did was go to the training area to grind a bunch of levels for Leprera. I trained for a long time until Lapras hit level 100. Then he learned his signature move, Tropical Remap. Then I sold my big pearl that I got from a Master Ball loot for just $500, and that kind of made me realize how broke I actually was. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't like being broke. So the next thing I did was go to the boss tower, because here you can get really good loot. And now that I had a level 100 Leprera, it was relatively easy to make money here. I quickly got amazing items like a light ball and a soul vest, and many more amazing items. Even a Dynamax candy. There were so many really cool Pokemon in the boss tower that I was having a ton of fun. And not only was it a ton of fun to take out these really high level Pokemon, but my money was going up and up like crazy. And after not too long of grinding, I realized that I had over $20,000 and a bunch of useful items. But I didn't know where to store these items, so the next thing I did was set out to find a nice place to build a house. Then I found it, a tiny island in the middle of a pond. This is where I was going to make my home base, because I thought it would be really cool if you guys join the server and build an entire city around this island. If you guys want to join, make sure on the Kyogre server and do /warp Sirud. That's going to take you right here, and my house is going to be right there. I also made a little dirt path here, so if anybody wants to make this into a really cool bridge, please do so. And after a little while, I was able to flatten the entire island. And because of that, I had a good amount of materials to actually build my little house.
The next day.
All right, and after a little while, I made something. Yeah, I'm just gonna call it something. You guys ever have a dumb friend that sometimes says something like kind of random, and you're like, wow, you know, he actually seems pretty smart. I feel like that is what happened with this build. You see, I'm a really bad builder, but I feel like this might be one where you look at it and you're like, ah, you know what? It's not the worst thing ever. Okay, it's pretty bad. Guys, listen, I tried. You know, I really did. I know that there's still like a lot more detail I can do on the walls and trimming and stuff, but I don't care. I just want to go catch Pokemon. So yeah, this is the house for now. We're definitely going to be improving it at some point, but I've been building it for so long that I honestly just don't feel like doing it anymore. A couple full inventories and $25,000 later, I was ready to start hunting for another fusion Pokemon. I gave my Sea Pickle a kiss for good luck. Then I RTP'd until I found a Mesa. Then I finally found one. And the reason I wanted a Mesa so bad is because this is where Aeron spawns. And I really need to find a shiny Aeron so that I can fuse its final evolution, Aggron, with our shiny Charmander that will eventually become a shiny Charizard. And if we can do that, that means that we would have our first shiny fusion Pokemon. My plan was going accordingly because I was finding a lot of Aerons in the area, but none of them were shiny. And after spending a couple of days in the area, the unthinkable happened. I found a legendary Pokemon, a Terrakion. I was so nervous. I didn't really know what to do, so I just started throwing Ultra Balls at it. And after about 50 Ultra Balls, I finally caught it. Terrakion was mine. Woohoo! Unfortunately, I wasn't really planning on using him too much, but instead using him to trade for another legendary Pokemon, like perhaps an Urshifu. If I can get someone to trade me an Urshifu for this Terrakion, then I could fuse the Urshifu with his Cinderace to get Cindershifu. So that was my plan. I stuck around a little while longer to try to find a shiny Aron, but was still unable to do so. I took a break from hunting shiny Aron and decided to hunt for another fusion duo. This was the only other fusion duo that didn't require a legendary Pokemon. It's a fusion between Greninja and Dragapult, and it's called Dragon Ninja. And so I set off, looking for those two Pokemon to capture. Eventually, I found a swamp biome to where I spent a couple of days there until I had eventually found a Froakie. Then, without too much resistance, I got the Froakie into the red and caught him. Finding Dreepy was a similar story. I had eventually found an Extreme Hills biome, but this time I didn't find the first evolution. I ended up finding the second evolution, a Dracloak. This capture proved to be a little bit more challenging because I didn't really have any Pokemon that could damage it without killing it. And so I did what I do best and just started chucking Ultra Balls at it. And eventually we caught it. And now the next step in the process is to get both of these Pokemon up to their final evolution. And the best way to do that is to go back to the training area and destroy these Tyrannitars. Quickly, my Froakie evolved into Frogadier, then finally into a Greninja. And Dracloak evolved into Dragapult. And now that I had them both fully evolved, it was time to go to the fusion room to fuse both of these Pokemon. I entered the computer, inserted Dragapult into one side and Greninja into the other. Then I put in the key and confirmed that I wanted to fuse the two Pokemon together to get a Dragon Ninja. He was so cool looking. I couldn't tell which fusion I liked more, the Dragon Ninja or the Leprera. Now you might be wondering, Sirud, what are you doing hundreds of blocks in the air? Well, you see, this is an acrobatic farm. I am actually scared of heights, so this is a little bit horrifying. But you see, if you type in /skills in chat, this menu pops up where you can see all these different types of skills that you can grind on the server. And one of them is acrobatics. And to gain XP in the acrobatics skill, you have to take fall damage. This skill in particular is not too essential for Pixelmon, but if I can get it to level 100, then I can jump higher and leap further, which I think would be pretty fun. So to kill time as I looked for a shiny Aron, I decided to grind this acrobatic farm until I found the Aron I was looking for. As soon as I got to the bottom, all I had to do was /home1 and it would send me back to the top. Eventually, I got my acrobatics level up to level 28 and got some rewards. One of them being a random Pokemon. So I redeemed it and got a Minchino. And after a great deal of time, after training acrobatics over and over and over again, and seeing countless Arons as I dropped down from the skies, eventually, it happened. I found a shiny Aron. I was really starting to give up hope because no one on the server seemed to have one. So I didn't think I would ever be able to accomplish this goal. But after throwing just one Ultra Ball at it, I had caught the Pokemon that I'd been looking for this entire time. I was so excited. And the very first thing I did was warp to the training area and get both of these Pokemon fully evolved. And after Shiny Labrat 1 and 2 were both fully evolved, I went straight to the fusion room to fuse them together. I sprinted straight to the monitor, added the Aggron on the left and the shiny Charizard on the right, put in the fusion key, and clicked to confirm that I wanted to get a shiny Agrizard. Oh my goodness. If this is not the coolest Pokemon in the entire game, well, I just don't know what is. I thought that the regular Agrizard looked cool, but this black and red version is absolutely amazing. I had never been happier. The only problem with my 3 fusions at this time was that they weren't all level 100 yet. So I spent the next little while training up Agrizard and Dragon Ninja until my entire team was level 100. And now that all 3 of my fusion Pokemon were fully trained, it was time to take on the first gym. Now, normally you're not allowed to use, I believe, any Uber tier Pokemon and definitely not any fusion Pokemon on these gyms, but I kind of know a guy who told me that it was okay for me to use fusion Pokemon against these gyms, and I wasn't complaining about it. The first gym leader was an electric gym leader who led with Galvantula. And late on into this gym battle, I had realized that I severely underestimated how strong these gyms were. So then I regrouped, rearmed, and brought in a whole team of 6. I also trained up the Scorbunny and Larvitar that I caught, so now they were fully evolved. And the second time around was much better. Cinderace was actually able to be a ton of help, and I ended up beating the gym. And with that momentum, I moved on to the next, the Dragon Gym. I led with Dragon Ninja and clicked Dragon Kunai, which is his signature move. It does a ton of damage. It hits 2 to 5 times for 30 damage each, and it absolutely shredded the gym. It seemed like every single time I clicked it, it ended up destroying the enemy. And with the combination of Dragon Ninja and Agrizard, we were able to destroy the second gym too. Now on to the Dark type gym. And by the skin of my teeth, we somehow won. I honestly felt like I was getting very lucky with these battles, but I decided to continue trying to beat these gyms while I was on a hot streak. The next gym was Ground type, which really favored my Leprera and Dragon Ninja. And without too much resistance, we managed to take that one out as well. I was on a hot streak and was not letting the momentum stop. And finally, after a very long streak, I finally lost a gym battle. But I was pretty happy with my 4 badges. Then I decided to do something that I don't really recommend. But I went out and caught 6 random Pokemon, and then I trained them all to level 100. You're probably wondering why I wasted so much time training these random Pokemon to level 100. Well, I don't actually care about these Pokemon, but I'm going to use a very, cheap and, I guess, cheeky strategy on the server. You see, to enter the war zone, one of the only requirements is that you have a full team of level 100 Pokemon. It doesn't matter what Pokemon they are, as long as they fall under the tier limits. So I went out and caught a bunch of bad Pokemon, trained them up to level 100 for the sole purpose of entering the war zone. My goal, obviously, is not to beat any other trainers that are in here, but it's to find legendary Pokemon, because legendary Pokemon spawn pretty often in the war zone, so my chances to find a legendary are greatly increased. And right off the get-go, I saw another player and decided to turn and run away. I don't think that he saw me though. I was pretty nervous. Even though none of these Pokemon I really cared about, just being in the war zone had some sort of aura to it that was frightening. As I was in Warzone, someone in chat asked to buy the fusion shards that I was getting from beating the gyms for $40,000 each. But being the businessman that I am, I never accept a first offer. So I countered with $80,000 for each shard, to which he replied, Then he said I'm trying to rob him. So he ended up buying 2 for $80,000 each, and I got $160K for it. I only had 30 seconds left in the war zone, and unfortunately saw no legendary Pokemon. But on the bright side, my plan did kind of work to just go in with a team of level 100s that I didn't really care about. Then not too long later, the impossible happened. Well, not really impossible. It's actually not very impossible when you're in the war zone. But a guaranteed spawned! I quickly threw my Eradicate at it, didn't play any games, and chucked a Master Ball that I got from one of the gyms at it. And since Master Balls have a 100% catch rate, I got it! Giratina was mine. I quickly got out of the war zone, went into my war zone bank, and withdrew the Giratina. And not only was Giratina an amazing Pokemon in and of itself, but it was one of the legendary Pokemon that could fuse with another Pokemon. That Pokemon being Gyarados. So all I had to do was get myself a Gyarados, then I could fuse the two together to get a Giratina. So Giratina was literally like the best legendary Pokemon that could have spawned for me. Then I gave Husk his 2 shards that he bought to repay my debts and continued on my adventure. I quickly RTP'd into the wilderness to find one of the most common Pokemon in the game, a Magikarp. That is because Magikarps evolve into Gyaradoses, and once I get a Gyarados, I can fuse it with the Giratina to create one of the greatest Pokemon of all time, and not too long later, I found exactly what I was looking for. That was seriously one of the greatest Warzone sessions ever. Not only did I accomplish my goal in catching a legendary Pokemon, but I also made $160,000 by selling 2 shards. I caught the Magikarp with much ease, then went straight to the training area to destroy a Tyranitar. And after just one Tyranitar, Magikarp evolved. This wasn't just any Gyarados, no. This right here was a prodigy. He was destined to become one of the strongest Gyarados fusions that the server has ever seen. And once again, I found myself in the fusion room sprinting to the computer to input 2 more Pokemon, a Giratina and a Gyarados. Even the sprite for this Pokemon looked amazing. And so I clicked it and began the fusion between my 2 amazing Pokemon. And just like that, I had acquired my 4th fusion Pokemon, a giant worm, but a giant cool worm. The more fusions I got, the less I knew which one I liked the most because they were all so epic. The next thing I wanted to do was go back to challenging some gyms. But before I did that, I remembered that putting held items on your Pokemon actually helps them a lot. And since I had been to the boss tower so often already, I had so many held items. I looked through both of my double chests and picked out a few that I thought would work well. I took out one of my 3 assault vests, a life orb, a choice specs, and a muscle band. I put the life orb on the Giratina, the muscle band on the Terrakion, the assault vest on the Agrizard, and the choice specs on the Dragon Ninja. Then I gave my Sea Pickle one more squeeze and headed back to the gyms. And after a long, hard-fought battle, we managed to do it! We beat the Steel Gym! All thanks to the Sea Pickle! All hail Sea Pickle! And so, of course, I decided to challenge the next gym as well. The Grass Gym was probably the easiest yet, as my Cinderace and Agrizard carried the whole way. Next up, Psychic Gym. My strategy was just to send out my Dragon Ninja and click Shadow Ball. And just like that, we beat the Psychic Gym as well. And so now we were on to the very last gym, the Ghost Gym. I started how I've been starting every other battle with Dragon Ninja and got to work. And just like that, we had defeated all 8 gyms. I was so excited. We even received a Choice Specs, an XP All, a Choice Band, and another Life Orb. And there's no one individual thing that I can thank more than my Sea Pickle. Let's go! I'm sure normally taking on the gyms is a lot more challenging than that. Even though, I'm not gonna lie, guys, I did lose a decent bit of times and then only put the times that I won in the video. I'm sure it would be even harder without the fusion Pokemon because you're technically not even allowed to use the fusions on the gyms. But anyway, we still have 2 more fusion Pokemon that we have to acquire if we want to accomplish all of our goals. And now that I accomplished my own personal goal of beating all 8 gyms, I got a legendary crate key. You don't typically get a legendary crate key from beating all 8 gyms, but because it was a personal goal of mine in this video, I thought it'd be really cool to give myself one of these keys. And so I took my legendary crate key, right-clicked the legendary crate with it, and saw a bunch of amazing items start flying above the crate. Until eventually, one item in particular started approaching. I had gotten a random shiny legendary and a legendary nature change. And so I redeemed my random shiny legendary Pokemon, and I got a Xerneas! Not only was this one of the coolest Pokemon in the game, but it was also the strongest, and it had one of the coolest shinies. And even though it had all of those amazing features, that was still not the best part of this Pokemon. Because Xerneas has the ability to fuse with another Pokemon, and not just any other Pokemon. Debatably the strongest Pokemon in the game, a Zacian. And so my next goal was to get my hands on one of the strongest Pokemon of all time so that I could fuse both of these together. And after hanging around the server for a little while, I was constantly asking in chat to see if anybody had a Zacian, until a guy named Strew by Mines asked if I needed his. So of course I said yes and asked him how much, and luckily he said $250,000, which is exactly how much I had. So he sent me the Zacian, and I sent him $250,000. But it was all worth it because now I had a Xerneas and a Zacian. And you all know what that means. The next thing I did was go straight to the fusion room, run up to the computer, enter in the Zacian on the left and the Xerneas on the right, enter the key, and confirmed that I wanted one of the strongest Pokemon ever created, a Zacius. Zacius was my 5th fusion Pokemon, and he might just be the strongest as well. Now that I had 5 fusion Pokemon, I only had 1 left to complete my final goal. And to get my last fusion Pokemon, I wanted to steal it from somebody else in the war zone. The only problem with that is you're only allowed one fusion Pokemon in the war zone, and choosing which fusion I wanted to bring was a very tough choice. So before I decided which fusion Pokemon I would bring to the war zone, I needed to go catch 5 strong Pokemon and train them up to level 100 to make sure that I had the best chance at winning my war zone battle. So I RTP'd and set out on a new adventure to catch 5 more incredibly strong Pokemon. The first one I found was a Ralts, which would eventually evolve into a Gardevoir. Next, I found a Galvantula. Next, I found a Gligar, which would evolve into a Gliscor. And the next Pokemon I decided to go with was a Skarmory. Then I remembered that I have a Tyranitar in my party, so I brought him out. And after looking at my 5 fusion Pokemon, I still wasn't sure which one was the strongest. But the one I had most experience with was Dragon Ninja, so I decided to bring him out. Dragon Ninja has swept so many gyms for me that I feel like he could definitely perform the exact same way in the war zone. And the time was upon us. I had a fully mapped out plan with how I wanted to use each and every Pokemon on my team, and I really felt like I was ready to enter the war zone. But this time, not to cower and hide, but instead to stand my ground and fight. As I entered, this time felt a little bit different. I knew what had to be done. This time, I was here for blood. I could smell it. I could smell a fusion Pokemon looming somewhere in these battlegrounds. And there, I saw my first target. And he actually challenged me into battle, but I stuck to my guns and was ready for anything. My Galvantula got off to a hot start by destroying his Blastoise. Then somehow he also destroyed the Galvantula. And then he sent out a fusion Pokemon, Lucartrace, and it destroyed my Galvantula. But since he sent out his fusion Pokemon, it was time to send out mine. Dragon Ninja. This was a battle for the ages, and I decided to use Dragon Ninja's signature move, Draconic Kunai, and it absolutely destroyed the Lucartrace in one shot. And because I was choice-spec'd, I had no other option than to continue to click Draconic Kunai, which on paper might sound like a problem, but when your Pokemon is as epic as a Dragon Ninja, it just one-shots every single thing. And so all I had to do was click that button a few more times, and next thing I knew, I was the victor. And so, of course, I decided to steal his fusion Pokemon, Lucartrace. I quickly TP'd back to my home, went into my Warzone bank, and withdrew my new fusion Pokemon, Lucartrace. I noticed that a wormhole had spawned right on top of my house. And when I went through the wormhole, I noticed that gravity was almost non-existent. Whoa! This place is crazy! The biome that I spawned in seemed to be some really dark, deep ocean, right next to an end dimension. I had never been in the Ultra Space dimension before, so this was all very new to me. And immediately, I found a really cool looking structure, so I went to go check it out. It turns out that it was a raid den, where boss Pokemon spawn. So I decided to challenge it with my Agrizard, and I was able to destroy it in one shot. This place was so scary. There were creepy Pokemon flying around in the air, but I found these really cool crystal blocks in a lot of the structures, so I decided to collect them all. It turns out that these were actually crystal blocks, and you can use these to craft armor. And so that's exactly what I did. I crafted a full set of plasma armor. There weren't many benefits of it because in Pixelmon, you don't typically get into many fistfights, but just in case, it's better to be prepared. Anyway, I have some amazing goals for this next 100 days. Since my first 100 days, a ton of brand new fusion Pokemon have been released. One of them being probably the strongest in the game. You see, it's a fusion between the god of all Pokemon, Arceus, and the devil of all Pokemon, Giratina. That's right, there's a fusion that's called Arceus. So one of the main goals of this next 100 days is to attain that Pokemon. The Ultra Space Dimension is actually a perfect place to start as well, because there's a ton of loot here that will help me collect all of the Arceus plates. And eventually I had found my first Beast Ball loot, where I got a PP Max, which honestly isn't the best loot to get, but those Beast Ball loots are exactly what I'm looking for. I soon noticed that there was a Beast Ball in each of them, and I was getting some pretty cool loot from it. And after searching the Ultra Space Dimension for quite some time, I still had no luck finding any of these Arceus plates. And so I asked in chat what the best way to find them was. And a guy named Ol Ethan said I could buy 4 of them from him for just 1,000 $1,000. That is a deal that I could not pass up. So I TP'd him to me, he dropped the plates, and I sent him $1,000. Now that I had just collected 4 of the Arceus plates, I was feeling really confident getting some more. And eventually it happened. I claimed one of the Beast Ball loots and I got a splash plate. I was so excited because that was the first one that I actually found by myself. And that motivated me even more to go find them. So I continue looking and continue looking until I found another one, the Earth plate. And then I start to go on a little bit of a roll. I found another one, the Spooky plate. Now I wasn't getting all of these back to back to back. There was a whole bunch of other loot that I was getting in the meantime, but I had also just found the Flame plate. Then I found the Zap plate, and I was really feeling like I was on a roll now. I had collected 9 of the plates and got 0 duplicates so far. Then I found the Icicle plate, and finally I found a duplicate. I found a second Flame plate. The last one I found was a Metal plate, and I was getting pretty tired of this Ultra Space Dimension, so I decided to call it quits. And just as I was about to leave the Ultra Space Dimension, something crazy happened. I found a Pheromosa. This is an Ultra Beast Pokemon that is extremely powerful. You can only find the Ultra Beast in this dimension. I was able to get it into the red with my Terrakion and start throwing Ultra Balls at it. And after just 2 tries, I did it! I caught the Pheromosa. Now, even though Pheromosa is an extremely strong Pokemon, unfortunately, there are no fusions for it yet on the server. So even though I would love to use it, my plan is to sell it on the GTS to get some money to hopefully buy another Pokemon that can fuse. So then I decided to put Pheromosa on the GTS. I listed him for $30,000 and listed him up for an hour and a half. And if you guys remember from the first 100 days, I still had $97,000. So I decided to look at the GTS for myself, and I found a deal that I just could not pass up. There was a Celesteela that was listed at $35,000, which is pretty ridiculously expensive, but I decided to buy it anyway, because Celesteela is one of the rare Pokemon that has a fusion counterpart. All I would need to do is find a Beedrill. Yes, a Beedrill. The thing that evolves from Weedle. And so I ran to the nearest forest to go searching for maybe the strongest Pokemon of them all. They are extremely rare and challenging to find. They're definitely not common at all. But hear me out, the fusion between Celesteela and Beedrill is actually insanely strong because the fusion itself gets the ability Adaptability. And what that does is it takes stab moves and instead of increasing them by just 50%, it doubles the damage of them. So any steel or bug type move that I use with the Beelastela fusion does double damage. And after just a couple minutes of searching, I found a level 6 Weedle. This little turd looking Pokemon would eventually fuse with one of the strongest in the game. And just like that, we caught it. So I went straight to the training area and started getting him a bunch of levels. And after just the first fight, he got up to level 16 and evolved into a Kakuna. Then Kakuna evolved into Beedrill. Now that I had both of them, it was time to go to the fusion chamber to fuse the 2 Pokemon together. I put Celesteela on the left, Beedrill on the right, and clicked to confirm that I wanted the Beelastela fusion. And just like that, I got him! There aren't too many super strong bug-type Pokemon in the game. Beelastela is definitely one of the strongest, if not the strongest. Most of the Pokemon that I use are either Fairy-type or Dragon-type or Water, so I was actually extremely excited to use a bug-type Pokemon because I don't typically use them very often. So I went back to the training area and grinded some more levels for my Beelastela. His last couple of levels, I gave him rare candies, and at level 100, he learned his signature move, Celestial Sting. It's a move that only does 55 damage, but it hits twice, so it pretty much does 110 damage. And because of his Adaptability ability, that gets doubled, so it pretty much does 220 damage. In the first 100 days, I told you guys that if you typed in /warp siren, it would take you to this town to build whatever you guys wanted. And I never really got the chance to show it off to you guys. So here is the town that you guys built. I will admit some of it is, well, maybe not the best builds. but it is really nice to see our community building together. But anyway, the warp is still active, so if you guys do want to join this town and build your own home in the village, be sure to go ahead and join the Kyogre server and type in /warp Sirud to get to the town. In order to summon a Giratina, you have to capture all 3 of the lake guardians, Azelf, Mesprit, and Uxie, and they spawn in the river biome, which is pretty fortunate because my house is in a river biome. So my plan was to stick around my house for the next couple of days and see if I can get any of these bad boys to spawn. But not only do you have to catch all 3 of them, you have to get their happiness all the way up to maximum happiness and then smack them in the face with the ruby. And after you do that, you can fuse the 3 rubies together to get a red chain. And after you get the red chain, you then have to find a Grisius orb, which I actually already have from the first 100 days. And then you just have to find a time-space altar. And that is how you spawn in Giratina. Now, I know that was a lot of explaining and probably got confusing at some points, but it's all going to start to make sense after we start finding these legendary Pokemon. And so I decided to take action. I got out my best team I possibly could, which was totally not a throw team at all, and decided to enter the War Zone. The War Zone is an area where a bunch of legendary Pokemon spawn, but if you engage in a battle with another player, the winner of the battle gets to steal a Pokemon from you, which is why I decided to get a full team of level 100 Pokemon that kind of stink, and I don't really care if I lose them. And then I found another player in the War Zone, which was very scary because there was no way I could possibly win a battle with this team. So I decided to run as far away from him as I possibly could. Luckily, he didn't seem to chase me at all, so I felt pretty safe and pretty much in the clear. Now, the War Zone does have different seasons, so every 2 months, the meta changes, meaning there's different tiers of Pokemon that you can use every 2 months, and right now it's set to OU, and fusions are not allowed this season. If fusions were allowed, I would totally just bring my entire team of fusion Pokemon, come in here and just shred everybody. But for now, since I can't bring my fusions into the War Zone, I kind of am forced to just bring these throw teams. I searched and searched and found a ton of random Pokemon that had spawned, but was still struggling to find the ones I was actually looking for. I only had 1 minute left in the War Zone and was getting kind of desperate, so I decided to walk up to the other player, and it seemed like he was actually pretty friendly and didn't want to battle either. So together we waited around for some legendary Pokemon to spawn, and then his buddy joined, and he was wearing really scary armor and had a yellow glow to him, so I honestly thought that he was going to murder me. Luckily, he did not, but unluckily, I was running very, very low on time until eventually I did and got kicked out of the War Zone. The next thing I decided to do was check the GTS once again, and what I found was amazing. There were tons of legendaries. There were 2 Palkias, 1 Registeel, a Magearna, but the one I was most interested in was the Suicune. You see, Suicune might not be the strongest individual legendary of them all, but he does have a fusion counterpart. So without much hesitation, I decided to purchase him. I went straight to my PC to get out my new Pokemon. He looked so cool, and I could even ride him as fast as I wanted. Although it was really cool to buy all of these amazing Pokemon, I was running really low on money, so I had to be very careful with my next purchases. Now, even though I had 1/2 of this fusion, the other side was also not very easy to attain. You see, the other Pokemon also maybe is a legendary. Luckily though, it's not the most challenging one to get. All I would need is a legendary orb and an ice stone, because the Pokemon I needed was an Articuno. And because I play on a server, it's a little bit easier to find these items. I asked in chat if anybody had a spare one, and Riggsy said he did, but I didn't need all 3. Take 2 back. I paid Riggsy $1,000 for the orb and gave him a screenshot. Jeez! Thanks for the legendary orb, Riggsy. Okay, but now that I had the legendary orb, all I needed was this ice stone that I got from the first 100 days to combine them together, and that gave me the orb of frozen souls. And that is exactly what I need to spawn in Articuno. But it's not the last step. Now what I had to do is actually fill up the orb itself. And to do that, I had to eliminate 375 Pokemon. Each time I eliminated a Pokemon, it added its soul to the orb. orb. And so I went straight to the boss tower and started destroying Pokemon one after another. The reason I went to the boss tower is because every time you eliminate a Pokemon here, you get some pretty good items. This was a great way not only to grind money, but to grind levels for your Pokemon and to get a whole bunch of random items. I was getting so many items from the boss tower that I had to go home and clear my inventory multiple times. And after a while of grinding, you could see that the orb was starting to fill up. And after a little while later, it happened. I filled up my orb completely and it turned into a bright crystal blue, which now made it time to go to the shrine area to spawn in an Articuno. Before I battled the Articuno though, there was one last thing that I had to do, and that was to find a Pokemon that could paralyze it. So after running around a spruce biome a little while, I found a Pikachu. In fact, it was actually perfect because Pikachu had the ability Static, which means that any contact a Pokemon makes with it might cause that Pokemon to become paralyzed. Not only that, but Pikachu is also very fast and can learn the move Thunder Wave. So Pikachu's only usage would be to paralyze the Articuno. Then I decided it was time. I walked up to the shrine, admittedly pretty nervous, and right-clicked it with my orb. Immediately, Articuno spawned and I'd sent out Pikachu. I clicked the move Thunder Wave and missed. But it's okay because Pikachu lived the first turn and managed to paralyze the Articuno on the second. Then I switched into my Terrakion, and I didn't want to risk killing it at all, so I was just using Quick Attack to do some chip damage. I Quick Attacked a couple more times until it was in the red, then started throwing Ultra Balls. And after what felt like 1,000 Ultra Balls, I finally captured the legendary bird. Articuno was mine. I quickly rushed to get him into my party along with the Suicune. Then I raced to the fusion room and headed straight to the fusion machine. There I added Suicune to the left, Articuno to the right, put in my fusion key, and clicked to confirm that I wanted the fusion Pokemon, Suicuno. And just moments later, boom! There he was! Probably the most majestic bird you will ever see. Not only was it super cool looking, but it was also incredibly strong. It has the ability Ice Scale, which halves all damage taken from special attacking moves. And it's incredibly fast and hits really hard and is relatively tanky as well. But the best part is it gets a signature move at level 100 called Frostbitten Flurry, which does 100 damage, has 100% accuracy, and it even summons hail. If I could conjure up a team that benefits from hail, this Pokemon would certainly lead the charge. After I fused my Suicune, I had a sudden urge to use it in battle. And to be honest, I had the same feeling for the Bilastila. The problem was I wasn't entirely sure where to use my Pokemon. That is until I stumbled upon the Battle Tower. The Battle Tower is a tower with a bunch of floors with trainers on every single floor. The catch is you can only bring 3 Pokemon, and the trainers that you battle also only have 3. The more trainers you beat, the more battle points you get, and with those battle points, you can go to the battle shop to purchase a whole ton of items, such as rare candies, PP ups, power items. You can even get fusion shards and fusion cores, and non-legendary IV boosts, along with a ton of different TMs and all of the Z crystals. The problem was I didn't have a third Pokemon to challenge this battle tower with. Now, you might be thinking, Sirud, you have a whole ton of other fusion Pokemon. And yes, while that is true, and I totally could use them, I figured that since this is an entirely new 100 days, I should probably stick to using the Pokemon from this one. And so I set out to find another 2 Pokemon that had the ability to fuse together. I checked out the list of all of the fusions, and what I thought the easiest one to attain that I haven't yet is the Hydreisaur. That is because neither of the Pokemon required are legendaries, meaning I can actually just find them in the wild. And not too much later, I'd found one half, a Bulbasaur. And soon after, I caught it. I quickly warped to the training area, put a lucky egg on the Bulbasaur, and activated an XP All. And with all that being done, Bulbasaur was gaining levels like crazy. He evolved into an Ivysaur, then into a Venusaur. And after that, I set off to find a Hydreigon. And eventually, I found a Swellows, which is the evolution right before Hydreigon. And then we caught him. I used the same strategy I did to level up the Venusaur with the Hydreigon. Except this time I went after Charizards because I could one-shot them really easily. And eventually, Swellows leveled up to to 64, which allowed him to evolve into the pseudo-legendary Hydreigon. And now that I had both of the fusion counterparts, it was time to go to the fusion chamber. I was so excited for this fusion in particular because I thought it was one of the coolest looking fusions of them all. And there he was, Hydreigon. He looks so cool. He was pretty much a giant Venusaur with 3 heads. I was so excited to use him in battle. Hydreigon has a special attack of a whopping 135 and gets a signature move at level 100 called Tri-Beam Cannon. It's a grass move that does 160 base power with 100% accuracy. However, every time it's used, Hydreigon's attack and special attack drop by 1 stage. He's also a very tanky Pokemon and gets the ability Thick Fat, which boosts its resistance to fire and ice type moves. But now that I had 3 brand new fusion Pokemon, it was time to train them up and get them prepared for the battle tower. And so the next thing I did was warp to the Pokemart and go down a couple floors into the TM shop. Here is where I would buy moves for my Pokemon, like Scald, that I could put on Suicune. And after I was done putting all the moves on my Pokemon, I went back to the training area and trained everyone up to level 100. And after a good bit of time, I was ready. Steela ended up having Celestial Sting, Heavy Slam, Leech Seed, and Protect. On the Hydreigon, I ended up putting Tri-Beam Cannon, which is its signature move, and then I gave it Fire Blast, Draco Meteor, and Flash Cannon, which it all gets from Hydreigon. Then for Suicune, I put Frostbitten Flurry, which is its signature move, combined with a Hydro Pump, Ice Beam, and Shadow Ball. Now my team is extremely offensive, but that is because these are all 3 versus 3. For the items, I ended up putting a Life Orb on the Steela, Choice Specs on the Hydreigon, and a Choice Scarf on the Suicune. But with all that being said, it was time to challenge the tower. Now typically with the battle tower, you're not allowed to bring in any Pokemon that are over the Uber tier, which fusion Pokemon most certainly are. But let's just say I pulled some strings and was able to lift that rule. And so I added my 3 Pokemon, clicked confirm, and started the battle. The first matchup was against a Mamoswine, which I clicked Heavy Slam against with my Steela and destroyed it. Then he sent out a legendary Pokemon, a Q-Rem, but it was almost no match for my Steela as he destroyed it in 2 hits. And last but not least, this trainer had a Xurkitree, which again, I clicked Celestial Sting and killed it in 1 shot. 1 trainer down, a lot to go. And Steela was not playing any game. He managed to get through the first couple of trainers on his own before finally going down to an Altaria, which Suicune had 0 struggles with. The higher up the tower I climbed, the harder the competition went. And I soon realized that even though I had very strong fusion Pokemon, they were not invincible. And after a couple more trainers, it finally happened. I got taken out by about the 10th trainer. After my first attempt, I decided to regroup and rearm and bring in the demon himself, Dragon Ninja. Hydreigon did great and there's nothing wrong with him, but I just feel like with Dragon Ninja on my side, I'll be able to destroy everything. And right away, Dragon Ninja was put to work destroying Pokemon. So after battling trainer after trainer after trainer, I kind of got bored and set myself a rule where I was not allowed to switch out Pokemon. And well, eventually that caught up to me and bit me in the butt when I ended up fighting a Blissey. And with my Steela dead and only special attackers left, there really wasn't much else I could do, and I eventually took the L. But Dragon Ninja was absolutely insane, and he took my win streak from about 6 to 61. And as of now, I am in first place on the win streak leaderboard with 61 wins in a row. So for now, I am the best battle tower battler on the entire server. Let's go. I was about to go back to the war zone again to hunt for some more legendary Pokemon, but before I went, an epic boss Slowbro spawned. So I decided to take out Steela and destroy him. This was actually extremely important because not only did I just get Slowbro's Mega Stone, but I also got my own Mega Ring as well. This meant that I can now Mega Evolve Pokemon, but I can only Mega Evolve the Pokemon that I have their relative Mega Stone for. So right now, I can only do Mega Slowbro, which between us isn't really that good. If you guys do want to see Mega forms of fusion Pokemon, that is totally something that I can do, but the only way I'll do it is if there's enough comments and support on this video to actually do that, because that will be a ton of work. And so the very next thing I decided to do was go straight to the war zone with my throw team, but this time I went with the Pikachu so that I can paralyze any Pokemon that I want to catch. And boy, I'm glad that I did, because almost instantly after joining the war zone, an Eternatus spawned right next to me. So immediately I engaged it in a battle, and Pikachu got to work. After I got it into the red and paralyzed, I immediately started throwing Ultra Balls at him. And on the very first try, I caught him. And so I instantly got out of the war zone and threw out my brand new Pokemon Eternatus. Let's go! This thing was so epic. At first, I wasn't entirely sure what I would do with this Pokemon, because in this series, I only wanted to use fusions. But then I remembered, it does get a fusion. And not just with any Pokemon, but the god of all Pokemon himself, Arceus, which is a Pokemon that I'd been trying to get earlier on in this 100 days. An Eternatus fused with an Arceus is not only going to look amazing, but surely it's going to be incredibly strong. And so my next goal was to go and capture an Arceus. But that would be a lot easier said than done. I was genuinely worried that after I spawned in the Arceus, I wouldn't be able to catch it, because that actually almost happened with the Articuno. And Arceus is most certainly harder to catch than that. So I didn't want to take any chances. And the only way to not take any chances in a Pokemon battle when you're trying to catch the other Pokemon is to have a Master Ball, which is an item that I didn't quite have yet. But that is when I discovered that the command /bingo is a thing. And if you complete one bingo, one of the rewards that you can get is a Master Ball. You can also get a Z Crystal, Arceus Plate, random battle item, and if you can complete the entire card, you get even better items. A rare crate, a Mega Stone crate, a Fusion Shard, Fusion Core, Z Crystal, or a legendary held item. But I will say that you only have 24 hours to complete the bingo or the card itself. But anyway, after analyzing the card, I picked out which row I thought was the easiest to catch, and I went with the bottom one. Litleo, Bidoof, Patrat, Spinarak, and Ice-Q. So I set off to go and catch all 5 of these Pokemon in the hopes that I would get a reward that would help me catch the Arceus. The first Pokemon that I found on my bingo card was a Spinarak. I paralyzed it, threw a Pokeball at it, and not too long later, I caught it. Litleo's a pretty common Pokemon as well, so not too long later, I managed to find one of those. The next Pokemon I found was a Patrat. Then eventually I found an ice biome where I found the Ice-Q. And last but not least, I finally found the god of all Pokemon. No, not Arceus. But Bidoof, there he is! This is the last Pokemon that I need for my bingo. And after catching him, I received a Master Ball. Completing that bingo was actually a lot of fun, and it made me kind of want to try to complete the entire thing. But the thing is, I had much bigger fish to fry, such as catching the actual god of all Pokemon, Arceus. So I went home and grabbed all of the plates that I currently have, just to keep myself organized, and then continue looking for a wormhole spawn. And after a little while of searching, I finally found one. A wormhole to the Ultra Space Dimension. I've been in here quite a lot recently, and I've started to feel a little bit more comfortable, even though it did have a very gloomy ambience. And after searching Beast Ball after Beast Ball, I finally got lucky once again and got another plate that I needed. The Dread Plate. Finding all of these plates was taking an excruciating amount of time. While I was searching for more Beast Ball loot, I found a 4-star raid and decided to take it out. Unfortunately, it didn't give me any Arceus plates, but it did give me a Destiny Nut, an Everstone, and a Big Nugget. For some reason, though, I do feel like in 5-star raids, there is a chance that those Pokemon will drop Arceus plates. And after a long time of hunting, I finally found a 5-star den. It was a Superior. I got a ton of really good items from that, including another Arceus plate that fell on the ground. Luckily, I saw it, because if I didn't, I would have just let it go. After getting a plate from a raid den, it kept my eyes peeled for other raid dens. But I was only battling ones that were 5 stars, and so I ended up leaving the majority of them. But what I did not leave the majority of are the Beast Ball loots. I was picking up every single Beast Ball loot that I could find, and by doing that, I had collected another plate that I needed, the Sky Plate. Eventually, I managed to collect 16 of the 17 Arceus plates until one last Beast Ball
gave me the final one that I needed, the fist plate. After getting a countless amount of duplicate plates, I've collected every single Arceus plate in the game. But I was so excited. Now that I had every single Arceus plate, all I had to do was go to the chalice at spawn. I wasn't really nervous at all in this 100 days until about, well, right now. I don't know why, but walking up to the chalice made me extremely nervous. But even with all the nerves, I decided to continue onward and place in plate by plate into the chalice until there was just one remaining, the earth plate. I double checked my inventory to make sure that I had my master balls ready until I finally decided that it was time to add a last piece to the puzzle. In 3, 2, 1, and there we go! The Azure Flute popped out of it. The Azure Flute is used to summon Arceus. So with it, I right-clicked the chalice and selected confirm. And there he was! An Arceus had just spawned. I took no risks at all and immediately chucked one of my Master Balls at it. And of course, without failure, the Pokeball captured. Arceus was mine. I was so excited. I had just caught the god of all Pokemon. This one felt a little bit different because I had to do so much work to get him to actually spawn in. Most other legendaries, you kind of just get lucky, but with a Pokemon like this, where you have to work for hours and hours to finally get him to spawn, it just feels a lot better. Part of me really wanted to keep Arceus as his regular Arceus form forever, but another part of me also really wanted to fuse him with the Eternatus immediately. Look at how amazing both of these Pokemon are, and immediately it seemed like they became best friends because they started kissing. Either way, it seemed like both Arceus and Eternatus were super accepting that they were about to be fused together. And so, that is exactly what I did. I warped to the fusion room and ran straight ahead to the fusion chamber, added Arceus on the left side, Eternatus on the right side, put in the fusion crate key, and clicked to confirm that I wanted to fuse the two together. One god Pokemon from another to create probably the strongest and most amazing Pokemon of all time, Arceus. He was humongous. I was not expecting him to be this big, but he looked absolutely amazing. There was floating diamond particles around him, and the color palette, everything about him was just so amazing. Not only that, but he had a base stat total of 775. He probably has the most OP signature move at level 100 called Divine Depletion. It's a move that does 120 base power with 90% accuracy, and the user regains 40% of all of the damage dealt. I honestly don't know if there's any Pokemon that could possibly ever stop this guy. This Pokemon truly is the god of all Pokemon. Eventually, I trained him all the way up to level 100, where he finally learned that signature move, Divine Depletion. I went straight to the boss tower to test out how strong my new Arceus was. And what I found was that he was insanely strong. He was eliminating Pokemon in pretty much one shot with a move that wasn't even super effective. I kept climbing the tower to hopefully find some sort of challenge for Arceus. But the more Pokemon I fought, the more I realized there wasn't really anything that could stop him. That is until I made it to the final floor and I found myself. This was certainly unexpected. I seem to be a legendary boss trainer, and a challenge is kind of exactly what I was looking for. And so, of course, I decided to challenge him to a battle. He led off with a Spiritomb that was level 140, and although I had a full team of legendary Pokemon, this 40 level gap was going to make a huge difference in this battle. I decided to lead with my Agrizard and Gigaton Volcano the Spiritomb. This guaranteed that the Spiritomb would be burned, having his attack for the rest of the battle. And even still, that wasn't enough for my Agrizard to take the Spiritomb down. So then I went into my super speedy Dragon Ninja to finish the job, to which he switches into Lucario, and I try to counter that with my Suicune. After Lucario used a close combat which lowered his defense, I went for a Frostbitten Flurry which did a ton of damage. Suicune ended up going down, and I went back into Dragon Ninja to finish the job. Then he switched into Roserade, which was a little little bit of a head scratcher for me. I wasn't entirely sure how to counter him, so I went to Belastila. Celestial Sting ended up doing a pretty good amount of damage actually, and was able to take him out. But then he had a fusion of his own, a Kyoleki, one of the fastest and hardest hitting fusion Pokemon of them all. So then I switched straight into Hydreisaur because I didn't think Kyoleki had anything that could really touch it. And I was right. I went for a Tri-Beam Cannon and I destroyed it in just one shot. Then he switched into Garchomp, and I really wanted to keep my Hydreisaur alive, so I switched into Belastila and let it die. Then I went back into my Dragon Ninja and used Draconic Kunai, which absolutely destroyed the Garchomp in one shot. His next Pokemon was Gastrodon, and I keep saying him as if it's not me, but really it's me, so it's a little bit weird. I'm not sure if I should say me or him or who, but either way, he is an imposter and do not trust him. Nonetheless, he had a Gastrodon, so of course I switched into my Grass-type Pokemon, because that was 4 times effective against it. I clicked Tri-Beam Cannon, and that destroyed him, and that was his last Pokemon, which meant I was victorious. And as I looked in chat, I realized that this wasn't just any trainer. This was a Dynamax keeper, meaning that if you beat him, you get a Dynamax band, which is exactly what I got. And so I equipped it instantly. Yo, that looks so cool. I decided to feed all of my Dynamax candies to my Arcernatus until it was the highest possible Dynamax level. Then I fed the rest of them to my Dragon Ninja because he's the glass cannon of the team and he's so cool. Now I have the ability to Dynamax any Pokemon that I want, including this Arcernatus. Legendaries only have a 1 in 10,000 chance of spawning, making them incredibly rare. And I certainly consider myself a Pokemon master, but this challenge will be nearly impossible even for me. I have 3 specific goals for these 100 days. First is to attain a shiny legendary Pokemon. Shinies have a 1 in 4,096 chance of spawning, but luckily I do have some other ideas to attain such a rare Pokemon. Number 2 is to get a mega legendary Pokemon. There are only a few mega Pokemon in the game and even fewer legendary mega Pokemon. My third goal is to fuse 2 legendary Pokemon together to create a god Pokemon. The server I'm playing on has a ton of fusion Pokemon, and I want to create one to be the strongest Pokemon on the server. And for a bonus goal, I want to create a gym on the server for you guys to come on and battle for yourself. Whatever team I have at the end of this 100 days is the team that the gym leader will have in my gym. And with all that being said, let's start off our adventure. On day 1, I selected Baby Rayquaza as my starter Pokemon. He was adorable and looked like a pool noodle, so of course I named him Noodle. I know he looks tiny and innocent right now, but he will eventually evolve to be one of the strongest Pokemon in the world. Noodle was so cool and rare that many players got on just to look at him. And luckily, custom Pokemon like Noodle are not the only feature that this server offers. You see, Smash MC offers many unique ways of attaining rare Pokemon, such as custom Lucky Blocks, textured legendary eggs, and legendary crates. Using some of these features will be very helpful to attain more legendary Pokemon in this journey. The first thing I did after admiring my legendary starter Pokemon was redeem some treasure hunt boxes at spawn. This was a great way to start our journey off on the right foot. I was able to get money, Pokeballs, random Pokemon, Lucky Blocks, and even a legendary orb. Legendary orbs are perfect for our objective. They have the ability to spawn in one of the legendary bird trios, Articuno, Zapdos, or Moltres, depending on what evolution stone you fuse it with. And I wanted to fuse it with the Fire Stone because Moltres is my favorite of the 3 birds. So I went to the mart and with the money I made from the treasure hunt, bought a Fire Stone to fuse with the orb. And just like that, we already had an orb of fiery souls. Unfortunately though, I still have to collect the souls of over 350 Pokemon in order for the orb to activate. Next, I decided to RTP into the wilderness to look for a good spot to set up my base. And luckily, I RTP'd right into a village. This was a perfect spot to set up my own base. And of course, as everyone does, I pillaged all the resources from the village that I could. Put him up! Quick! Give me all your money! I have a Baby Rayquaza and I'm not afraid to use him! Don't mind if I do. Thank you very much. Thank you for the cash register. register. Please don't call the authorities. And after taking everything I could think of from the village, I found my first target for Noodle to get his first elimination, a Kakuna. So I sent Noodle out, and he already had the move Dragon Ascent, which was perfect against Kakuna, and 2 turns later, Noodle got his first elimination and his first level. Noodle went on a tear, taking out any Weedle or any Kakuna in his sight. And before I knew it, Noodle was already level 10. They grow up so fast. I decided to give Noodle a little bit of rest, and I found 2 rare Pokéloots on the ground. The first one was black glasses, and the second one was a stupid papaya berry. I thought this old monk would enjoy papaya berry, but no! I think he didn't appreciate that I haven't showered in a couple days. Before I got too ahead of myself and leveled Noodle all the way up to level 100, I decided to start building my base of operations. I spent all the money I got from the spawn treasure hunts on building blocks, then got to work. I wanted this build to have a Pokemon theme to it, so I built it with that style in mind. And just so we're all clear, I am a pretty poor builder. And I know this one in particular came out looking like Dirt Boy built it, but I promised myself I would improve this build as the 100 days went on. And by the way, if you guys do want to join me in this town, make sure to join the Zacian server on Smash MC and type /Warp Siren. That will take you to my house where you can start building too. Anyway, after building a house that looked like it's been through war, I decided to go back to training Noodle. I knew that at level 50, he would finally evolve into the almighty Rayquaza, and I couldn't wait to get him. So I trained him for a couple of days until he got to level 33. But honestly, training can be pretty exhausting, so after I was done, I decided to do one of my favorite things in all of Pixelmon: open lucky blocks. I received 8 common blocks and 5 uncommon blocks from the spawn hunts, and breaking these could make or break our entire adventure. You see, these blocks have a chance to spawn any Pokemon at random, and even have a chance to upgrade into rare and epic blocks that guarantee a legendary spawn. If any of these blocks upgrade to that tier, I would finally be able to use a second Pokemon. So I placed my first common lucky block down, broke it open, and got a Cherubi. I caught it nonetheless because I actually had a scroll, and one of the quests on it was to capture 15 Pokemon. I opened the rest of my lucky blocks and got a Roggenrola, Drillbur, Ledian, Tauros, Haxorus, and a Persian. But finally, my last lucky block upgraded into an uncommon one. This meant that I now had 6 uncommon lucky blocks. These blocks guarantee a shiny Pokemon, and if they upgrade, it would mean that we got a legendary Pokemon next. So I placed all 6 blocks down, and as the sun rose, I prayed to the Pixelmon gods that one of these would upgrade. My first Pokemon was a shiny Geodude. I was nervous. My heart was pounding. I knew that this would be one of the best opportunities I could ever get to acquire a legendary Pokemon. I opened my second block and got a Clobbopus. Really? A Clobbopus of everything? I opened my next block and honestly, I thought I was getting trolled. I got a shiny Spheal. Nonetheless, I caught it and stashed it away in my PC to never see the light of day again. I broke my next block with anticipation, and it happened! I got myself a rare lucky block! The Pixelmon gods do exist! The thing is, as well, is this lucky block could actually upgrade again into a Master Ball or epic lucky block. And if it does, then that would mean I would get a shiny legendary Pokemon. But before I opened that lucky block up, I decided to open up the last 2 uncommons. I got a Delibird and another upgrade! This was honestly the absolute best case scenario. I was absolutely not expecting to attain 2 rare lucky blocks from the few lucky blocks that we started with, but I can't say I was disappointed. This was such a relief because my only Pokemon that I could use up until this moment was Noodle, and whatever 2 Pokemon I got from these lucky blocks, I knew would be Noodle's new role models. And for good luck, I decided to put 1 dirt block on top of the first rare lucky block. Then I opened it and got a Volcanion! Volcanion is one of the only fire and water water-type Pokemon in the entire game. And it even has the ability Water Absorb, so water moves don't even affect it. It's easily one of the cooler legendaries. The only problem with it is it didn't have any fusion counterparts, and that is what I was hoping for most. Then it was time to open up the final lucky block. I took a deep breath, approached it, and gave it one big ol' wallop. Oh my gosh! Let's go! Yo! No way I got a Mewtwo, bro. And just like that, boys, we got one of the most overpowered Pokemon of all time. A Mewtwo. Mewtwo was one of my favorite legendaries, so I decided to fly on him for a bit in celebration. Woohoo! Let's go! Imagine you're a little tiny Sentret and you just see a giant Mewtwo flying above. Attack! Oh. That's awkward. After messing around with Mewtwo for a bit, I decided to get back to business. Now that I had multiple Pokemon, it was time to take on one of the server's biggest challenges, the gyms. These gyms are great for making money and collecting fusion shards, which are needed to attain fusion keys. So to prepare for the gym, I EV trained all 3 of my Pokemon. Noodle in attack and speed, Sponge in special attack and speed, and Frieza in special attack and speed as well. Oh, yeah, I nicknamed my Volcanion Sponge for its water absorbability and Mewtwo Frieza for obvious reasons. And now it was finally time to battle. So I went to the first gym full of confidence, and well, it was much harder than I predicted. Psych! We destroyed the first gym, tearing it to bits! I think I might have even made the gym leader want to retire. I received $3,000, lucky eggs, Pokeballs, and a fusion shard for defeating the gym. This was great because I used to be poor and now I could afford to buy TMs for my Pokemon. Unfortunately, I was about to face my biggest challenge yet, the 5th gym. It was an electric type gym, and with Noodle being a flying type and Sponge being water, it was very good against my team. It even had the legendary Pokemon Tapu Koko, and for obvious reasons, the battle didn't last too long. After all the destruction I put Lieutenant Surge's co-workers through, it was time for me to get punished. In about 5 turns, the battle was over, and I was very ashamed, especially because I had a crowd of fans watching. I felt like Gary Oak, but instead of being awesome and always winning, I was publicly humiliated. And after totally not crying at all, I knew it was time to get back on the grind. I didn't realize I'd have a rival going into this 100-day challenge, but Lieutenant Surge has given me no choice. My new most important goal was to destroy him. To do that, I had to train up Noodle and get more Pokemon. So I went back to my home to check on the progress I had made with my legendary orb. It was about 80% full, so I decided to get back on the mission of collecting more Pokemon souls. And after a while of eliminating Pokemon, Noodle was up to level 45 and my orb was full. I was pretty nervous because I didn't have any Master Balls and I haven't caught any Pokemon yet, but I knew that adding a 4th Pokemon to the team would be crucial. So before spawning it in, I went to the mart to buy some Quick Balls, and I also bought Thunder Wave and taught it to Mewtwo so that I could instantly paralyze it. It's probably important to note that if I failed to catch Moltres in my first battle, it despawns forever. A lot rode on this moment, and I could feel the pressure. Next, I walked up to the shrine and added the orb, and immediately the Moltres spawned and engaged in battle. The first thing I did was say a prayer and throw a Quick Ball at it. The way Quick Balls work is the earlier in battle you are, the more effective the ball is. Unfortunately, that didn't work. So next, I paralyzed it and did some damage with Frieza. But after a while, I was starting to lose hope, because every time I threw a Pokeball at it, it would barely even wiggle and then break free. It was a very slow and tedious grind, but after over 30 Ultra Balls later, I finally caught it. Let's go! I was so hype. My 4th Pokemon was finally acquired. Shortly after though, I realized I had a common quest scroll in my inventory that I had completed. I wasn't even sure what the challenges were, but I right-clicked to redeem the rewards. I got $1,000 and 8 rare candies from it, which was was nice, but the best part was it reminded me of the Battle Pass rewards, which you get just for playing on the server. And so I checked the Battle Pass and found out that I was already level 6. And so I redeemed all of those rewards as well. But all of this reminded me that I asked the managers in the beginning of this adventure to add a feature where every time I defeat a gym, I got 500 Smash Coins. And since I defeated 4 gyms now, that meant I had 2,000. Smash Coins are what you can use to buy really good items like Lucky Blocks and Crate Keys. But instead of doing the smart thing and buying a legendary Crate Key, I bought something even cooler. You see, it's not always about how strong your Pokemon are. It's also about how the trainer looks. So I decided to indulge in the server's finest drip and bought myself Galarian Moltres wings for 1,500 coins. Yo, this is sick! What's up, dude? You jealous of my wings? This dude's definitely scared of me now. Okay, buddy. Maybe I lied. Maybe it is all about the Pokemon. This dude is literally a Steve skin with 0 drip at all, and he has one of the coolest fusion Pokemon that we've ever made. Okay, I'm kind of embarrassed, I'm not gonna lie. And speaking of money, by the way, guys, there's something that I have to admit. I'm addicted to spending all of my money on building blocks. I know, in this 100 days, I'm supposed to create the best Pokemon team to ever exist, blah, blah, blah. But what good is that without a nice home to go along with it? And now I have $61. So now, poor as ever, I spent the next couple of days working on my home. And it was a little bit of a struggle, to be honest, because I kept running out of blocks that I needed. So, being the peasant that I am, I ran around and collected blocks the hard way. And as I was out and about, literally jumping around, I managed to increase my acrobatics level to level 5, which actually rewarded me with $500. And what happened next was pretty strange, because in one instant I had $500, and the next, poof, it was gone. I have no idea what happened. But in the end, not only did I manage to complete most of the structure of my house, but I was also able to add some decorations as well. So now, when I destroy Lieutenant Surge, I'll have somewhere pretty nice to celebrate. My favorite part about the house is I made the stairs just like how they are in the Pokemon games, where you walk up the stairs and you teleport to the next level. But anyway, speaking of Lieutenant Surge, I still had a lot of training to do. And so it was time to get back to work. And my next objective was a pretty fun one, I have to admit. And it was to finally evolve Noodle into the giant, majestic dragon he was destined to be. Luckily, he was already level 45, and he evolved at level 50, which meant he only needed 5 more levels to become Rayquaza. Just as I started to venture out to level up Noodle, I claimed my daily reward and got 16 Ultra Balls and another common scroll. That reminded me, I really needed to get my hands on a Master Ball. The Moltres battle really opened my eyes to how difficult catching legendary Pokemon really is. So instead of training in the wild, I traveled to an area where you can not only level up Pokemon, but get rare loot and money as well. The Boss Tower. The biggest issue with the Boss Tower is that the Pokemon are very, very strong. But if you manage to eliminate them, it's very easy to make money. My plan was to use the Boss Tower to evolve Noodle and make enough money to buy a Master Ball from another player on the server. The first Pokemon I faced was a level 100 Meowscarada. Luckily, we now have a Moltres on our team, which absolutely destroyed it. We received an XP Candy M, $350, and a Protector. Then I decided to put an XP share on Noodle. This way he would get experience no matter which of my Pokemon eliminated another one. And after just a couple battles later, Noodle was level 46. I was getting amazing loot, including hundreds of dollars every single battle, and even items like leftovers. Eventually, I found this epic Arcanine, which I managed to take down with Frieza and Sponge. And from just this one Pokemon, I got $500, a good rod, and a lucky egg. And Noodle was now level 49, meaning only a couple of more battles, and he will evolve to be one of the strongest Pokemon on the server. And one giant Tyrantrum later, and it was happening. Noodle was finally evolving into Rayquaza. He looked amazing. Noodle and I have been through such a long journey already. I was so proud of him and the monstrous dragon he had become. But there was still so much more journey left, and Noodle knew that. And after being at the battle tower for quite some time, we racked up almost $5,000, which surely would be enough to buy a Master Ball. So I went into the GTS to look for some. I saw a lot of Pokemon and eventually stumbled across 4 Master Balls for $100,000. No. Actually, I think I'm not gonna do that. But I kept looking and found another Master Ball for $800,000. And then I exited out of the GTS and cried myself to sleep. Turns out, guys, Master Balls are a lot more expensive than one might assume. So instead of buying a Master Ball, I went back to the Pokeball merchant and did the noobiest thing ever and bought an entire stack of Ultra Balls. Yet another L for Mr. Sirud. Now, if you guys remember, one of my goals is to attain a Mega Legendary Pokemon. And luckily, Rayquaza has a very unique way of Mega evolving. Instead of needing a Mega Ring like all of the other Mega Pokemon, Rayquaza only needs to know the move Dragon Ascent. This is a flying type move that does 120 damage. Luckily, baby Rayquaza knew this move from the start. So that means I can Mega Evolve Rayquaza now, right? No. You see, not only do Pokemon either need a Mega Stone or a specific move learned in order to Mega Evolve, but the trainer needs to be wearing a Mega Ring as well. And although I'm known as the Drip King, I still don't have a 24-karat gold ring around my finger. There are 2 ways to attain a Mega Ring. One is to find a Mega Pokemon in the wild and defeat it, which is insanely rare and nearly impossible to find. The other option is to defeat me. Yes, me. There is a Sirud NPC at the top of the boss tower that gives out a Mega Ring if you defeat it. The problem is I'm the GOAT and undefeated. No one has ever defeated that trainer. So some would say I'm in quite the pickle. The fastest way for me to get a ring on my finger is probably to find the love of my life and quit Pixelmon forever. But that's not the way we roll. Pixelmon is life! In /store, there's new stuff. I still have $500. Oh, I could buy a Kyogre head. Dude, I could add Charizard X-Wings! No, instead I have these. Actually, these are still pretty sick. Which one do I buy? Arceus head, Kyogre head, or Mewtwo head? Ooh, do I buy an Epic Crate-Key? Nah, I don't buy an Epic Crate-Key. You know what we do. Kyogre head. Come on now. Let's go. Yes, sir. Yo-ho. Oh my God. This boy is dripping now. And now I have 0 Smash coins. I ran around aimlessly and thought about the best approach to defeating the Sirud NPC. And after much thought, I realized the answer was simple. Entei. Yes, I know there are a couple of stronger and fancier Pokemon like Arceus, Zacian, Zamazenta, Lugia, Kyogre, Groudon, Xerneas, Yveltal, Dialga, Palkia, Giratina, Darkrai, Giachi, Deoxys, Ting, Lucia, and Pal, Tapu Koko, Solgaleo, and Eternatus. But that's not the point! Entei has a very special place on this team because Moltres and Entei have the ability to fusion and create an insanely strong Pokemon known as Eruptrace. Now, capturing Entei would be quite difficult, so I'm just gonna buy him. And according to the community, they sell for around $50,000. With some quick math, that's about $50,000 more than I currently have. So I think I need to start selling some things. First, I listed 4 fusion shards for $70,000. And if those sold, I would be in really good shape to get my hands on an Entei. Now, you might be wondering, why on earth would you sell fusion shards if you plan on fusing a Pokemon? Don't you need those shards to craft a fusion key, Daddy Sirud? Can't believe I actually wrote that in the script. Typically, yes, but I have big brain the system. In the battle pass, I am now level 48, only 2 levels away from level 50. And what's the reward at level 50, you may ask? You guessed it, an entire fusion key. And so I feel like my plan is pretty obvious at this point. Sell all my fusion shards, get to level 50 on the battle pass, and redeem the fusion key. This was actually the first time I checked my battle pass in a while, so I redeemed all the rewards, then got back to grinding it. Turns out you actually get some pretty cool stuff. I had 8 more common lucky blocks and 1 uncommon, along with a bunch more battle items and some random Pokemon papers. I even got 2 random eggs. So I decided to hatch them first, and I got an Anubis Skinny and an alternative Eevee. I didn't realize at the time, but these eggs were actually like special custom textured eggs. How much do you sell for? Please sell for $1 million. I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty shocked by these eggs. Unfortunately, they were both pretty trash when it comes to their IVs, but I decided to list them on the GTS anyway. I put the Eevee up for $15,000 because I have no idea what I'm doing. And I listed the Skitty for $1,500 because everybody hates Skitty. Next, I redeemed my random ice Pokemon and got an Abomasnow. Then I opened my shiny triple choice, which allowed me to select one of 3 shiny Pokemon. My options were Drifblim, Caracosta, and Blipbug. And I decided to go with the Pennywise Balloon Drifblim. Whoa! My Eevee sold! Yes! Inland Mammal! Bought my Eevee for $15,000. Let's go. Boys, we're at 43K. We actually got so much money from the Battle Pass alone that selling the Eevee actually got us like almost to the point where we can buy an Entei. Before I negotiate with anyone about buying an Entei, I needed to do what I do best. Open Lucky Blocks. I had 8 commons and 1 uncommon. If my luck was as good as it was earlier in this challenge, there's a chance I could get another legendary Pokemon here. I started opening my common lucky blocks and got a Wurmple and Feraligatr. Then I realized I actually had an extra lucky block in my chest, so I placed that one down as well. Then I got a Luxio, Badoo, Rotom, and Rimbombi. It doesn't take a genius to notice that that is only 6 Pokemon because 3 of them upgraded. Now I had 4 uncommon lucky blocks. Surely one of them would upgrade into rare, right? I opened the first one and no. But then you wouldn't believe it. 2 of the next 3 upgraded into rare lucky blocks. Boys, the Pixelmon gods are on our side today. Ooh, Deoxys. Okay, I'll take that. Not the best Pokemon in the world, honestly. But hey, a legend is a legend, and I'd rather have that than nothing. 3, 2, 1. Luckily, my second lucky block did not disappoint in the slightest. Dialga is one of the strongest Pokemon in the entire game. With a Dragon Steel typing, not many Pokemon are super effective against it, making it very hard to KO. Next, I sold my shiny Drifblim in the STS to gain another $3.3 thousand, putting me at $46,400. And out of curiosity, I went to check my progress on the Battle Pass, and it took me a while to realize, but I was now at level 53! That meant I could finally redeem the Fusion Key itself. So my last task to get a Fusion Pokemon was to get myself an Entei. As I waited for someone to sell me an Entei, I decided it was a good opportunity to finally trade my Pokemon to level 100. So I activated my XP and warped to the training area. Luckily, the level 80 trainer only had Garchomps, which was 4 times weak to Ice, and Frieza knew Ice Beam, so it destroyed them in 1 hit. This made it pretty easy to level up my team quickly. But after a little while of leveling up my team, a player on the server gave me an Entei. And so I sent him $50,000 and went straight to the Fusion room. I could not wait to get my hands on my first Fusion Pokemon. I ran up to the computer and added Moltres to the left side and Entei to the right. Then I inserted the Fusion Key and waited for the magic to happen. Bang! Just like that, we have our hands on one of the coolest Pokemon of all time. Yo! Oh my gosh, bro. That is so sick. Not only does the Ruptrace look awesome, but it even has some insane stats to back it up. It's a pure fire type Pokemon with 110 HP, 140 attack, 80 defense, 120 special attack, 85 special defense, and 90 speed. And it even has the ability Intimidate, which lowers the opposing Pokemon's attack stat when it enters the battlefield. This Pokemon is sick. I decided to name it Hephaestus after the Greek god of fire. And while I was at it, I named Deoxys Virus because that's literally what he is, a virus from outer space. And I named Dialga Doctor Strange because he is the god of time. I finally had a full team of legendary Pokemon, and boy did it feel good. And after celebrating for a short while, I decided to go back to the training area to continue to level up my team. Fusion Pokemon are insanely strong, but they get even stronger at level 100 because every custom Pokemon on the server, whether it be be a custom paradox or a custom fusion, gets its own signature move at level 100, and I wanted Hephaestus to learn it as soon as possible. Hephaestus's level 100 signature move is called Roar of the Inferno. It's a 120 base power physical move with 90 accuracy and a 50% chance to burn. And after a little while of training later, it happened. Hephaestus got to level 100 and learned the move Roar of the Inferno. Shortly after that, the rest of my Pokemon followed suit and became level 100 as well. Then I ensured that everyone on the team had the best possible moveset and held items. And it was at that moment that I realized it was time. Lieutenant Surge was about to have a very rude awakening. After my team was fully constructed, I raced straight to the gyms, found the electric one, and engaged the leader in battle. I led with Frieza, and boy oh boy did he get off to a hot start. I put the held item choice specs on him, which increases his special attacking moves by 50%, but it locks him into the first move used. So I just kept on clicking Side Strike, and it kept working. Eventually though, Mewtwo went down, so I immediately called on the great beast Hephaestus, and he did not disappoint. Shortly after, Virus came through as the cleanup crew and finished the battle. Boom! Yes! Let's go! Eat that, idiot! We finally got back at Lieutenant Surge and completely embarrassed him. I hope he goes crying to his mama. With the momentum, I went directly to the 6th gym, which was a dark type. To be honest, it was pretty scary. The leader took down 4 of my Pokemon, but I was still able to squeak through with a W. Now for the 7th gym, Steel type. This one went easier than the last one, with Hephaestus carrying once again. After this battle though, I did realize that many of the moves on my team, including Roar of the Inferno, only have 5 PP, meaning you can only use them 5 times per battle. So after I absolutely destroyed the Steel type gym, I went to the mart to buy PP maxes to increase the 5 PP moves to 8. I maybe could totally use some of those in real life. Anyway, before challenging the final gym leader on the server, I wanted to get my hands on a Mega Rayquaza. I really wanted Noodle to go crazy in this final gym battle, because so far Frieza, Sponge, and Hephaestus have carried the team. So instead of challenging the gym, I challenged myself at the top of the boss tower. Wow, that is one handsome guy. Look at that jawline. Yo, this dude is chiseled. You guys would not believe what happened. Sirud absolutely destroyed Sirud. Can you guess which one won? It wasn't me. I lost. I'm not gonna lie, this battle made me consider retirement. At this rate, I really have no idea how I'm supposed to defeat it, or how I'm supposed to accomplish my goal of attaining a Mega Legendary Pokemon. I was starting to want to give up on that goal. At this point, the days were flying by, and I knew I didn't have much time left to accomplish the objectives I originally set out for. So I decided to run around spawn and look for more treasure hunts that I missed out on. I searched and searched, but it became more and more evident to me that these loot boxes were harder to find than I thought. That was until eventually I found this one and received a Master Ball. This was amazing and made me feel really confident if I ever battle another legendary Pokemon. I'm sure you know, but Master Balls have a 100% catch rate. And so next time I battle a legendary Pokemon, I can just throw this Master Ball at it and instantly catch it. I continued to search for treasure chests, but eventually I stumbled across this amazing room at spawn that I'd never seen before. It had all sorts of different textured Pokemon, and I wanted to get one so badly. My favorite was by far this Galaxy Rayquaza, but there were no treasure hunts in there, so I continued to look around spawn. Until I realized the spawn had actually changed and was now Easter themed, which meant there was an entirely new treasure hunt at Warp Easter Hunt. This was a different area, but essentially the same concept as how the loot boxes work at spawn, except this time they were Easter eggs. And because it's so similar, I don't want to bore you with the details, so I'll just tell you what I got from it real quick. 8 quick balls, $3,000, a legendary orb, 16 ultra balls, 5 rare candies, a lucky egg, $5,000, 16 XP candies, a daycare, a shiny stone, 2 turtle eggs, $7,500, a common lucky block, a potion of leaping, another master ball, a fusion shard, a fairy wand, 32 repeat balls, another common lucky block, 8 more rare candies, a specific Pokemon, $10,000, a random Pokemon egg, 3 PP maxes, 2 ability capsules, 32 dust balls, 16 ultra balls, a triple shiny choice, a lucky egg, and $5,000. And the whole reason I went to do these treasure hunts was to contemplate how I would approach the next couple of days to achieve my goals. And unfortunately, I never ended up coming up with a solid plan. And so I just decided to go home and continue to work on my home aesthetics. That is until I stumbled across a flaming Glameow. If you ever see a Pokemon with flames shooting off of it, that means it's part of the Poke Hunts. If you run the command/hunts, you can see them all. Essentially, the way it works is if you catch a Pokemon listed with the specific requirements, you get a reward. And similar to the gyms, the managers of the server allowed me to get Smash coins along with the regular rewards. So I caught the Glameow and received a big pearl, which you can sell for a decent amount of money at the mart, along with 200 Smash coins. And although buying more cosmetics was tempting, I knew that I had to spend these coins wisely in order to get a shiny legendary Pokemon. The best way to ensure I got a shiny legendary Pokemon was by breaking a Master Ball lucky block, which costed 2,500 Smash coins. So I decided to continue doing Poke Hunts and complete some of my bingo card. I decided to target the bottom of my bingo card because it consisted of the most common Pokemon. So I had to catch a Swinub, Pancham, Bellsprout, Frigibax, and Bunnelby. Shouldn't be too hard. First, I RTP'd to a snowy biome and caught a Swinub. Not too long later, I found a Frigibax and caught that as well. Next, I found a level 10 Bellsprout and caught that. Then I went to target Bunnelby because I knew that he spawned in the forest, but unfortunately, he only spawned during the day. So I teleported to a jungle biome because that is where Pancham spawned. And after just a couple minutes of searching, I found him. I caught him with a quick ball on the first try. And I was about to go back home until I stumbled across an ultra wormhole. These wormholes were exceptionally rare and typically could only be spawned by 3 Pokemon: Arceus, Solgaleo, or Lunala. But sometimes, if you're really lucky, they'll spawn in the wilderness. And what happens if you go through the portal will shock you. The portal takes you to an entirely different dimension. This is where many rare Pokemon spawned. It was very intense. Ominous music played as I roamed around the area. The gravity was low, but my heartbeat was not. This is where all the Ultra Beasts and many Paradox Pokemon spawned. So I knew I had a good opportunity to find some insanely rare Pokemon. And I know, a lot of people don't consider Ultra Beasts as legendary Pokemon, but I do. And I'm making the rules. One thing I noticed instantly about the Ultra Space Dimension was all of the raid bosses that were here. Raid bosses or raid dens are pretty much boss Pokemon that you get to battle with other players or random Pokemon. And if you defeat them, you get pretty good rewards. And so I decided to defeat every single one that I found. And as I was running around for a little while, I stumbled across my first very rare Pokemon. This was a Radiant Sail, a custom past Paradox form of Venusaur. And as much as I wanted to catch and use this Radiant Sail, since this video is a legendary only challenge, I am not allowed to. Now, I know that I've caught other Pokemon in the past, but that was strictly to complete bingo challenges or Poke Hunts. Catching a Radiant Sail wouldn't accomplish anything except for me just being able to sell that Pokemon, which I didn't think was fair. Then I found this Ultra Ball loot, which gave me a Pixie Plate. And that's another really cool feature of the Ultra Space Dimension is there's a lot of these Ultra Ball loots, which give out really good items. If you collect all 17 different plates, then you can spawn in Arceus. And as much as I would love to do that in this challenge, I simply just didn't have enough time to collect all the different plates. I was honestly starting to get pretty upset because I had spent so much time in this challenge and still had no idea how I was supposed to accomplish some of my goals. Finding the Radiant Sail was cool at first because of how awesome and rare it was, but it made me pretty sad knowing that it could have been a legendary. I spent a lot of time in the Ultra Space because I knew it would be very challenging to get back if I ever wanted to, but I didn't really have any plans while I was there. I was kind of just hoping that an Ultra Beast or something would spawn. And so I ran and continued to claim every Beast Ball reward I could find until something unexpected happened. Oh my! No, is this real? Is this real? Oh my god! No way! Oh my god, please tell me. Yes, I have my Master Ball. Let's go! That's right, an Iron Nightmare spawned. A custom future Paradox Yveltal. This was easily one of the coolest Pokemon in the entire game, and trust me, it's as strong as it looks. It's an electric dark type Pokemon with 130 HP, 110 attack, 95 defense, 145 special attack, 100 special defense, and 109 speed. Its signature move is called Beyond the Void, which deals 100 damage with 90 90% accuracy. Flying on this thing was insane. It made me feel like I was in a Star Wars X-Wing. Then I finally decided to leave the Ultra Space Dimension, only to find out that it was nighttime. Then I found another flaming Pokemon, a Purugly, which was in the easy section of the Poke Hunts, but I knew that if I caught it, I would get 200 Smash coins for it, so I decided to catch it quickly. And since it was night out, I decided to go to the training area so that I could quickly get my new Iron Nightmare up to level 100. And eventually, he became level 100. And he finally learned the move Beyond the Void. Also, I decided to name him X-Wing for obvious reasons. I also decided to put an Assault Vest on him as well. Assault Vest increased Pokemon's special defense by 50%, meaning his special defense would go from 236 to in the mid 300s. The only drawback with it is you can only use attacking moves. But luckily, all 4 of X-Wing's moves are attacking. I thought the Assault Vest would make the most sense since his signature move requires a 1-turn recharge, meaning he'll have to take a hit from one Pokemon. And if I can set it up that Pokemon is a special attacker, theoretically, X-Wing should be able to take it pretty well. And after building X-Wing up to be the strongest Pokemon it could be, I decided it was finally time to finish my bingo card. Shortly after, I found the Pokemon I sought after, a level 7 Bunnelby. Catching Bunnelby meant I completed my bingo. As a reward, I got a normal EMZ, which is actually a pretty rare item. And to confirm, I had completed the entire bottom row. So I checked my store balance and it was a perfect $2,500. I was torn. I didn't know if I went to get a custom textured egg or an epic lucky block. I'll admit I also had some very intrusive thoughts to buy all the cosmetics that I could, but I finally decided to be a responsible 25-year-old man and do the right thing, which was to buy the epic lucky block. And so that is exactly what I did. This was the moment I had been waiting for so long. A guaranteed shiny legendary Pokemon. I would finally be able to accomplish my second goal. I threw some rare candies and a Master Ball on it for good luck. Then I took a deep breath, walked forward, and broke open the Master Ball lucky block. And I got a shiny Zeraora, which is my absolute favorite legendary Pokemon. And its shiny form is even cooler. And I haven't even mentioned the best part about it. You see, Mewtwo has the ability to fuse with 2 Pokemon. One is a Dragonite, and the other, you guessed it, Zeraora. The problem is we don't have a fusion key right now, but we do have 8 fusion shards. And so all we need to get a fusion key is a fusion core. Then we can craft the key. But that was a lot easier said than done. I scoured the GTS and instantly found 2 fusion cores, each selling for $190,000. And at the time, I only had $68,000, meaning I had to find a way to come up with over $120,000. I sold just about every single item that I have accumulated over this 100 days. I sold my Master Ball, I sold my normal EMZ, I even sold all 4 of my legendary orbs. But after selling everything in my chests, I worked my way up to $115,000, which meant that I needed $75,000 more in order to afford the core. I weighed my options, and there wasn't all that much I could do except to sell one of my own. The Deoxys that we named Virus had a very special place in my heart. He helped me so much in our gym conquest and is an essential part of the team. Unfortunately though, there's only room for 1 psychic Pokemon, which means Virus has to go. And so I gave him one last hug, said my goodbyes, and listed him on the global trade system for $110,000. This was a sad, sad day. You will be missed dearly. Okay, no one was buying him, so I changed his list pricing to $70,000. It's kind of awkward. I really need the money. And not too much longer, the Deoxys was purchased for $70,000, which meant that we now had over $200,000 and could finally afford a fusion core. So without any hesitation, I instantly bought myself one of the fusion cores. Then I grabbed all 8 shards that we had and crafted myself a fusion key. The goal of this 100 days was not necessarily to make fusion Pokemon. However, if I have the ability to, I certainly will. And also having fusion Pokemon will help me in one of my ultimate goals, which is to get a mega legendary Pokemon. And so the plan was set in stone. Go to the fusion chamber, fuse Mewtwo and Zeraora together to create Merora, and use him along with our other our amazing Pokemon to finally destroy the Sirud NPC boss and attain a Mega Ring. Then we can finally Mega Evolve Noodle to become the strongest Rayquaza on the entire server. Aura was easily the biggest glass cannon on the team, where it severely lacked in defenses, it completely made up for in attack and speed. Before I did challenge the Sirud NPC one more time, there was one last thing I had to do. Destroy the last gym. The final gym was a fire type. Its team consisted of 2 legendaries, being Heatran and Volcanion, and it also had a Charizard, Incineroar, Ninetales, and Blaziken. And just like that, we did it! The final gym was defeated. Meraora and Hephaestus carried us to victory, and as a reward, we got $10,000 and 3 Master Balls. But now it was time for the real challenge, the Sirud NPC. I warped right to the boss tower and went to the top of it, only to find my arch nemesis, myself. I challenged him, full of confidence, and he led with the same Pokemon, Spiritomb. I led with X-Wing, and they battled it out and essentially KO'd each other, but they drew first blood and Spiritomb went down. So then I called on Hephaestus to finish off Spiritomb, and the next Pokemon he sent out was Lucario, but not just any Lucario, a Mega Lucario. But as soon as I clicked my move, Hephaestus was down. That shocked me quite a bit. Then I sent out Sponge, and bang! One after another, my Pokemon went down. I was watching my dream turn into my biggest nightmare, and just 5 short turns later, it was all over. All of that hard work just to get destroyed again. And that meant no Mega Ring for me and no Mega Evolution for Noodle. And so I went home with my head down in shame. I've concluded that I'm not the Pokemon master I once thought I was. There wasn't much time left in these 100 days, and certainly not enough to challenge my NPC again. And so I decided to give up hope. A Mega Legendary Pokemon was just too difficult, and I needed more time. And although I was amidst a mental breakdown, I'm still a man of my word and decided to spend my last few days building a gym of my own. And as promised, it will be a gym that you guys can battle. But don't worry, this NPC will not be level 140, and it also won't publicly humiliate you and destroy you and pulverize you and wreck you and scar you like the other one did at the boss tower. The gym leader of this gym will be my actual level 100 team, and if you guys beat it, you'll get an epic crate key. And guys, with the gym up and running, sadly, that concludes this 100 days in Legendary Only Pixelmon. If you guys want me to do another 100 days, comment down below, and hopefully I'll be able to get my hands on that Mega Ring once and for all.